Leadership crisis at the embattled state-owned Transnet continues. This follows the resignation of the CEO of the Transnet Freight Rail, Siza Mzimela. Mzimela will step down from the position at the end of October after 3 years at the helm. This comes hot on the heels of two other executives resigning. Daily Maverick journalist Ray Mahlaka, who has written extensively about the leadership crisis at Transnet, joins us now. Ray, thank you so much for making time for us this afternoon. Let's start with, the resignation of Mzimela. So it was Portia Derby who left first. Now Sizakela Mzimela. She didn't really have a choice, did she? Because it looks like it was either she resigns or she was going to be pushed out.
Indeed, Clement, and I want to go back to the 1st of September when Transnet presented its financial results, unveiling a financial loss of 5.7 billion rand and Transnet's rail operations no longer being reliable for the economy. And at that point, on the 1st of September, the writing was on the wall that Portia Derby, Siza Mzimela would fall on their sword, because Public Enterprises Minister on the very same day called for a review of Transnet's operations, as well as a skills review at Transnet's operations. That skills review would look at whether Portia Derby and Siza Mzimela were fit for purpose and still fit to lead Transnet. So it was at that juncture, Clement, that the writing was on the wall that Derby and Mzimela no longer had political cover anymore and could not hide from their failures over the past few years when they led Transnet in various operations.
And what are some of those failures? Because industry stakeholders have been warning of the collapse of Transnet for a while now. Rail export fell from a high of 213 million or so tons in 2018-2019 to 144 million tons in the last financial year. And yes, the company has experienced a number of shocks that are beyond its control, whether you talk the COVID-19 pandemic, the rising crime, the flood damage, cyber attacks, etc. But if we're being honest, there have also been some management failures.
Absolutely. And, when it comes to Transnet, not a lot of people understand how crucial of a cog Transnet is in the economy. Transnet is responsible for ferrying most of the iron ore and coal that is produced in South Africa and exported or moved around the world. And Transnet is responsible for moving fuel around the country as well. And when Transnet operations are not operating properly, South Africa's business sector does not operate properly, and the economy and exports are held to ransom by Transnet's failures. But you're right, Clement. I think most of the issues at Transnet are also due to mismanagement by management. The private sector has volunteered its services and skills to Transnet to fix some of the problems. But Derby and Mzimela weren't really keen on taking up the help that was offered by the private sector. And of course, there are external factors that hamper Transnet's operations, such as vandalism, as you pointed out, and also cable theft. But really, Mzimela and Derby were not willing to take up the offer from the private sector to help it.
How complex were the challenges at Transnet? Could they have been resolved in the 2 or 3 years? Because, the company has achieved only 25% of its target in the last financial year. We have been hearing of the 5.7 billion rand loss for the same financial year. But those who support Derby say she wasn't given enough time to make the necessary impact. No one would turn around, a complex entity that was damaged by corruption and state capture like Transnet in 2 to 3 years. That's the argument that they're making.
Yeah, and you can say maybe that's a fair point. Transnet was the site of the key site of state capture. Transnet underwent many years of underinvestment in its operations. But again, I go back to what the private sector offered. Because the private sector offered, security to guard some of the rail networks to prevent incidences of cable theft. The private sector offered its people who are experienced to offer skills to Transnet, because Transnet underwent a long period of it's losing skills, people who are experienced. But the private sector really offered help to the CEO, but that was refused. I mean, the impact of Transnet's operations or failures on the economy is that Stellenbosch University's Professor Jan Havenga calculates that Transnet or the economy is losing about R1 billion a day as a result of the dysfunction at Transnet. So yes, there is historical problems that Portia Derby and Siza Mzimela walked into. But the private sector really offered help to turn around the situation.
And you speak about the skills that have been lost at Transnet. I heard the Minister, Pravin Gordhan, this past week describing as regrettable the decision by Derby to issue those voluntary severance packages to skilled and experienced personnel, which, I mean, the argument is that that decision crippled the organization. But do you think it's possible that the Minister himself didn't know about it? Because his department says he didn't know about that plan to offer those severance packages when it happened. The Minister only found out later, even though, the board always shares the company's strategy with the shareholder representative, which in this case is Pravin Gordhan. So what are the chances that, as he indicates, he didn't know that there was a plan to cut staff members and ultimately, save about 3.2 or so billion rand from that decision, because that's the argument that his department is making now.
Yeah, I find it hard to believe that the minister was not aware about the voluntary severance packages that were offered to 400 plus Transnet employees, most of whom have been at Transnet for many, many years, decades, who are experienced, who know the ins and outs of Transnet and know where the problems are and can identify and quickly fix where the problems are. Job cuts are such a sensitive topic, first of all, in South Africa. Given the weak economy, the many jobs lost, even from COVID, jobs that still have not been recovered since COVID made its way in South Africa. So job cuts are a very sensitive topic, and I find it hard to believe that the minister would not be aware, about the political controversy that job cuts would create. First of all, but to defend the minister and play devil's advocate here, the minister's role at Transnet would be to look at the governance affairs of Transnet. So he's not very much involved in the operational affairs of Transnet. That's the job of management and the Transnet board. So you can argue, you can advance an argument to say that the minister is not involved in the day-to-day operations of Transnet, including job cuts. But I find that very hard to believe because job cuts anyway would create such a controversy in politics.
I mean, it would be a first for me. I've seen many SOEs go on a process of cutting jobs, whether it's the SABC, whether it's the Post Bank, the minister whose responsibility is to oversee that entity will at the very least know about it. Not that he can issue an instruction that, no, you can't go ahead with it, but at the very least, it's part of the strategy that you have sight of as the minister who's responsible for that entity. How much accountability does he take though, Ray? I mean, how much accountability should Pravin Gordhan take? I mean, surely he can't dodge accountability entirely, because so far he says, well, Mzimela didn't have logistics experience. It's regrettable that Portia Derby took that decision to offer those severance packages because now we don't have the necessary skills. But is he escaping scot-free here?
Yeah, I think he should take responsibility because he was the one who appointed or approved the appointment of Portia Derby 3 years ago. And at Portia's appointment 3 years ago, a lot of people said she wasn't the right fit for Transnet. She didn't have much rail experience, logistics experience. I mean, she comes mostly from the Treasury, the National Treasury. She has experience when it comes to financials and, financial management, but not much rail experience. So, even though there were those views 3 years ago when Portia Derby was appointed, the minister went ahead and approved the appointment of Ms. Derby. So on that score alone, there should be accountability. On another score is state-owned enterprises fall under Mr. Gordhan's watch. State-owned enterprises have the mandate of creating jobs, growing the economy, and really driving the government's developmental agenda. While state-owned enterprises have not done any of that in many years. In fact, state-owned enterprises are underperforming poorly. They're causing a lot of money, not only to the fiscus, but also to the economy. So on that score, another score, I think the minister needs to take a moment and reflect about accountability and what his role is when it comes to the performance of state-owned enterprises.
Okay, so we are seeing these significant changes in the landscape in the leadership of Transnet. But what substantial change will this bring when it comes to the functioning of this company? What do you expect will happen next?
Over the next few weeks, there's going to be really interesting moves. In September, early September, Minister Gordon called for the board to review Transnet's operations and find ways on fixing its ports, its rail network, and also that review of skills within Transnet. So we are expecting, an announcement or the findings of that review that has been made by the board. There is a policy that the cabinet is debating at the moment. It's called the National Logistics Roadmap, and that roadmap will find ways of involving the private sector into Transnet's operations. Private sector players may be running trains, and also the rail network of Transnet. Essentially lessening the monopoly of Transnet in South Africa's economy and involving the private sector more in Transnet's operations, and that policy alone will be debated by Cabinet over the next few weeks. So lots on the go there at Transnet.
All right, Ray Mahlaka, always appreciate your incredible insights.